Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Think Tank. I am Candi Kelley, and I'm thrilled to be spending this time with you. Thank you for making time for me. Before we begin and jump into this week's episode, I want to send some love to my 2023 Think Tank sponsors, Simnox, Redemption Plus, Roller, Betson, and Delta Strike. We appreciate all of their support, which allows us to bring you new episodes over and over again. And I'm super excited about this week's episode. As you know, on Thursdays, TrainerTainment likes to spend a little bit of time away from the doing. We like to spend some time thinking and getting to know each other and building this beautiful community that we have. And today we are introducing you to one of the newest additions to TrainerTainment. We're introducing you to Genevieve Sullivan. Genevieve Sullivan comes to us as a new coaching and training specialist on our team. And she has such a breadth of knowledge in dealing with young adults. She has a master's degree in higher education. So that deals with 18 to 25-year-olds. And she has over 20 years experience driving outcomes through program design, development. She's worked with leadership development and cross-functional team management through her experiences in the past. So we are so excited to have her as part of her team and excited to introduce you to her. So let's jump into this interview and get to know Genevieve. Genevieve, welcome. Why don't you take a few minutes to tell everyone a little bit about your background and then what led you to TrainerTainment?
Okay, yeah. Well, thank you for having me here today. I'm excited to talk about being here with TrainerTainment. So my background, I actually come from working in nonprofits and for colleges and universities. So I mostly focused in both of those spaces on either like large scale event planning or leadership development of college age students, which also meant large scale event planning. And so I worked for, 5 or 6 years in nonprofits planning, and then got a master's degree in higher education, it's basically like if you get like people have masters in early childhood development or elementary education. Higher education is working with people ages like 18 to 25 and just the developmental areas that they're in during that stage of life. Worked for a number of colleges and universities, including Butler University here in Indianapolis, where I am. And then moved on from there to work for the YMCA here, and had many different hats at the Y, including helping run their overnight residential camp. So old school sleepaway camp, like you see in the movies. I lived on site and helped run that program for a number of years, and then ended up as the training director for the YMCA of Greater Indianapolis, specifically working with staff members who work with youth and families. And so worked with them for about 5 years before coming here to TrainerTainment. And as a part of that, also got a certification. I'm a certified professional coach. So being able to work one-on-one with people or with groups, coaching them to be their best selves.
Very, very cool. There is a lot of, since you have joined the team, I've seen a lot of synergy between what you have done in the past and then like what we do in this industry. And so it's been so cool to watch that come out in speaking with you. So the TrainerTainment job got posted, right? Like, what was it about the position that compelled you to apply for it?
Well, I think, some of it, so much of it was the coaching piece, right? So I really enjoyed that part of the work that I've done, either formally or informally, in all of my roles, like mentorship coaching. How do you build leaders? How do you get people to be their best selves? And with that coaching certification this past year in particular, really honing those skills. So the fact that it can be difficult to even find coaching positions at all, right? It's an industry overall where I think it's still sort of developing itself in a lot of ways when it comes to one-on-one or business, individual coaching. And so on top of that, just like you mentioned, once I realized that the work that I did with the YMCA was so similar to family entertainment centers. So for example, at the camp that I worked at, we used to run family camps. right? And so all it is how do you advertise to families? How do you sell both kids and parents on something that they're coming into? How do you build programs and attractions? I would use the word attraction now that I've been working for trainers. That's canoeing. Our attractions were just like canoeing and hiking and climbing towers. And you all have some of that too. And so it just really connected in both of those ways. And so again, just like you're saying, we went as a team to go walk around a family entertainment center that had a climbing wall and some obstacles. And I know how to do that as a part of my job at summer camp. I know how to belay people. I know what safety looks like. And so it really connected a lot more even than I was expecting interviewing for the role and seeing it.
And then of course, and your training role, like you were training everywhere from like the camp. You trained the leadership to train the camp counselors, but those camp counselors are like 18 up, and then you've got your leaders. And so learning the different, I guess, leadership skill sets that aren't just, can you do this task? It's not a task-oriented skill set. It's actually about a mindset or a skill or getting better in some way that you've already were doing for the why.
Well, that, and just like, right, exactly like you're saying, you have your frontline staff, your hourly staff, you're teaching them the skills, but then how do you teach that leadership? How do you help build a better culture when it's not going the way that you want to? Or how do you help take the energy that you're putting into it or that leaders are putting into it? I think a lot of times, certainly through COVID, we've seen a lot of shifts and change, and there's a lot of burnout, and there's a lot, like people really had to deal with during that. And so especially coming into that training director position, a lot of my work in my last couple of years at the Y was trying to build us back from the institutional knowledge loss, from the cultural shift. I know that a lot of places were shut down. We as the Y were open for childcare the entire pandemic. And so I also, working with staff who were working through all of those things too. And so you get very different levels. And on the meantime, you're still trying to onboard, right? So building what does it look like to build a new onboarding process? What does it look like to go into an institution that's been running for a very long time and pull together the resources they already have to build a good onboarding and training, right? So there's lots of places, we were one certainly that we had a system before 2020. And then you rely on the system you have, but all the people who were in that system have floated other places or indifferent. And so you just lost a lot of the process. And in that, you lose a lot of the people, right? Because then you start seeing the people who are they're not onboarded correctly. And so you don't retain them. They're not doing what you need them to do. And so really that training director was trying to kind of pull all of those things together. And again, that's a lot of what we're able to do with TrainerTainment and why it worked out so well. There's a reason they hired me based on, this kind of stuff. But right, how do you take that individual family entertainment center, really look at what's going on there? Yes, there's trends everywhere, but like what's going on here and how do we build back what we need to really cause and really like spark success again, right? Spark, maybe some people have lost their spark in all of this and their passion for it. How do we find it? How do we shift the energy? How do we get everybody on track? And so that work that I put in before, or building trainings, like you said, for 18 to 22-year-olds, and they lived overnight with kids, like the amount risk management and like training, being responsible for all of that stuff. It really, it can be complicated, but then on top of that, just like in what we do with TrainerTainment, how do you make that fun and exciting and something where it's going to stick in their brains, right? You can sit and talk to people for 2 hours about risk management or hygiene or, whatever training might be, but that could just go right over their heads, yep. Right? So build it into the culture and build trainings that really speak to the staff that we're trying to retain that information.
I know that we have just started at TrainerTainment, like gathering some of your insights with that, but that's one of the areas I'm very excited to dig into because, again, the synergies between a lot of times with family entertainment centers, that frontline staff starts with us at like 16, and we're going to keep them for about 2 years. So just like a residential camp or some camp counselors, like you may not have them for a long period of time. And so to get them up to speed, how do you maintain a cultural environment that everybody wants to be part of with that kind of, there's always going to be some turnover just with the nature of the businesses. And so like, how do you keep that culture intact? How do you make sure that they're invested in the right amount to where make them want to stay? And higher training and retaining like is a question for everyone. How do I maximize that the most? Because it is expensive to rehire all the time. It's expensive to not train correctly, all of those things.
Yeah. And also and I think, again, very similarly with the age of frontline staff is, I can see on the front end how you'd be like, well, how much effort do I want to put into this person if they're only going to be here 2 years? And then really looking at the longer term, right? So if we become, if family entertainment centers, I think once were and still can be this place where it's your first job. It's this place build the skills that take you onto your career. This happens with camp counselors all the time. I was a camper and a camp counselor, and the amount of people I know who are doctors and attorneys and like have really large, fulfilling, interesting, successful careers that will speak back to that first work experience as what taught them the skills they needed to do what they do now. And I see that same with family entertainment centers. Like, why? Great. We're going to launch them into this. And they are going to come back. And it's incredible how much retention, not just retention, but then also once people realize that they're getting good jobs after being at your center, that's advertisement in itself for parents and other kids and ambitious kids and kids who want, to have great things to put on their resume or their college applications, if that's the path that they're taking, right? How do we build up, that culture in these centers so that we're looked at like, every bowling center should be the first place somebody applies to, or every, trampoline park or mini golf, like whatever family entertainment center, but like you could be the hub in your community for everyone's first job.
I know. And, at TrainerTainment, we talk a lot of times about growing people. I have some clients who've been open for a number of years, their location has. And just the pride that I see these owners have when an old employee comes back and they have graduated and gone on to their career and they're like in there to eat or to bowl, and they seek out the owner sometimes or like, make sure you tell them that I was here. And they like keep them updated with where they are in their life because of that connection to their very first job and the skill sets. And that connection isn't broken even throughout their career. And so it's really fun to watch that sometimes.
It's great. Or when you get asked to be a reference for either a job or a master's degree or graduate degree program, that like the amount of references I've given where I'm just like, whoo, this person's way smarter than me to be able to use this program. But, that I got to be a piece of that and helping develop their leadership skills and, towards that career that's going to make a big difference.
Yeah. So there's a lot of insights that we are going to be digging into with Genevieve's background to help us at TrainerTainment with all that we do on growing people. But I wanted to ask you, if you think back at your career thus far, what is one piece of that one lesson that your career has taught you that you think everybody should know?
It rolls right into, I feel like I've had too many careers probably at this point, but as like an elder millennial, this is the role we play in this world, is right. You keep moving, evolving. And so what I've always, said to my students when they were college students looking for their first role, or any of my, this age range, is really, it's just about being open to the opportunities, even if you don't know it exists yet, right? So I couldn't have told you 2 years ago or 5 years ago that I was going to be like a business and sales coach and trainer for family entertainment centers, right? The idea, how would I found this?
Did you even know it existed at that point?
Right. And there's so many roles like that now, especially with technology advancing, right? Like for my generation, certainly it has always been like, you may not even know what role you're training for. And so I think it's really about taking everything you can from the role that you have, find mentors, learn that skill, but be open to what's out there in the future, that just keep your eyes open and your heart open to what might be possible, because you just never know.
I love that, because I do think as a society, we do this thing with kids where we're like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Thinking that like an 8-year-old brain even understands all of the options. And so you hear a lot of the big ones, I want to be a doctor, a veterinarian, a teacher, those things. But Genevieve will be going to her first IAPA coming up in November. And I remember my very first IAPA, Genevieve. I was working for the franchise company I worked for before coming to TrainerTainment. And I really thought of my current position as a placeholder until the next thing. Like, I didn't see myself staying in the industry. I didn't even understand, I had come from hospitality more, which I knew the breadth of a hospitality industry. I did not understand the breadth of this attractions industry. And I remember walking through IAPA the very first time and like really looking at all the things and being like, oh my gosh, it's someone's career to figure out the way the lines should move at an amusement park. It's someone's career to think about how the menus should be specifically laid out for this quicker, ordering thing. It's someone's career for the brand, like all of these things that I did not ever even think about. And I was like, oh, this isn't just a placeholder. This can be a career.
So many ways, right? And so many paths. There are so many paths. Absolutely. And I am even having, to be honest, I went to Amusement 360 just a few weeks ago and had the same thought as I'm learning about, the family entertainment center and this industry that we're in, and just like things that you almost take for granted, that you don't realize that there's not even just a career. This is a team of people. There are companies competing, right, for your business for this type of thing. Not small. It's very.
So speaking of what we didn't know at 8 years old, when you were 8, what did you think you wanted to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a zoologist. I wanted to be like a veterinarian. I wanted to like hang out with giraffes and elephants. And yeah, I took that vision a really long way. I remember like entering high school and thinking I should take Latin as my foreign language because I was going to need all of that for science. And I don't know what happened. I think I took a science class and then I was like, oh, I don't think this is for me. I do still love animals, but I just don't take care of, large animals in zoos.
The good news is we can give you a little bit of a parallel. Zoos and aquariums are part of the attractions industry. Yes. So
I do. And the amusements and attractions. Yeah, I'm aware of that now. So I still can maybe hang out with some animals, just not be in charge of them.
Just not be in charge of them and bathe them and clean up after them and all those things. And also
I might have dodged a bullet personally for that, but that's where my head was at.
We on Think Tank, when people come on Think Tank, I typically ask them a signature question, and the question is, both sides of the coin, but I choose one or the other. Today, you have to answer both sides of that coin, though, for being a guest and introducing everybody to being one of the new additions to TrainerTainment. So the first side of that coin is, what are you doing on a consistent basis to grow yourself?
Oh my gosh, what aren't I doing to grow myself? I think actually, honestly, going for a coaching, like a certified professional coach, really opened up a huge pathway for me in terms of like self-development. And so I actually have a personal coach that I work with once a week, and it's personal, professional, just figuring out what my path needs to be and what I need to be doing, working out with somebody. What are the ways that I can grow that make sense for me? I like to, I've been reading as part of it. Audiobooks, so listening is important. I get way more information from videos online, a TikTok, a YouTube than I probably should, but that definitely sparks ideas that lead into, you know, more looking into stuff more regularly. But I think it's important just, again, to be like open to new information coming in. So I think like right now, trying to think of like what my growth area. So I moved to Indianapolis during the pandemic. I had lived at the overnight camp, moved to Indianapolis. And so obviously it's like one of my growth areas right now is like, how do I continue to build my community here, right? Like, how am I intentional about being, you know, making new friends, being social? What does it look like to define community? Like, what does that mean to me? And so being really intentional about like what area of growth is always really important. Obviously, I'm growing professionally with this and learning a lot. So trying to keep things realistic for how much I can learn in one day. About TrainerTainment and all of our work here, but really just expanding skills and taking opportunities, right? There's also a lot of things just within our organization that I'm able to, and it's very open and able to learn different software programs or stuff like that. So watching, learning, figuring out. I also do a lot of growth and development by doing. So how do I practice my first coaching sessions, right? You know, all of these great trainings and onboarding that you all have put together for the new coaches here. But that's a lot. It's a lot of just being open and reaching out to what speaks to me with growth.
Look, there is no shame in like the amount of information you can get from videos. As you know, like as a franchisee who wired her entire like Cat 5 lines by herself watching a YouTube video. Like she taught herself how to do that.
Watch on YouTube.
And then just found someone to come in and certify it, you know, instead of having to do the install work, which saved her a ton of money. So
yeah. So it just sort of depends on like what is going on that day. Because my pop culture brain will also do deep dives. I know like way more than I should currently. I mean, I'm going to say this is October 2nd. I know way more about Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift right now than I probably ever have, because that is the current, you know, pop culture story right now. I love a deep dive.
All right. So the flip side of that coin that I sometimes ask my guests is, what are you doing on a consistent basis to help grow others?
That's a great question. I think, and I learned, I'm referencing back this coaching certification because a lot of it has to do with like not giving advice. And I love giving advice. But for coaching, you can give advice, but it's just listening. It's listening intently, not just at what people are saying, but what's the underlying thing that's going on, to help make suggestions or help them process what's going on in order to make the best decision for their growth for them. So like an example, right, might be if someone's complaining about the cost of a haircut, you know, and you're listening to your friend talk about the cost of the haircut, like we can go on, maybe they just want to vent with you, right? Or, and so that's one. And the other is it the cost of the haircut, or are there financial struggles that are going on that's leading to stress about the cost of the haircut? And so that's what I mean by like really kind of trying to dig in a little bit, because you can give advice at all of those levels, right? We can give advice about complaining about the cost of the haircut. We can give advice about, you know, just like I said, letting them vent. But if it's really about something bigger in them that this is just sort of a symptom of, then you can give all the advice in the world, but it's not going to really speak to them. And then also really just helping people grow by asking questions that just sort of help them expand their thought. So they're coming up with their own solutions, right? It's not always, it's very rarely me who comes up with the solution someone's going to stick with, right? Just like we want to, so it's helping people process. So it's a lot of listening and a lot of, trying to just kind of figure out like, okay, where's sort of the root of this? And then let's attack that for growth, because once we get to that, then the rest of it falls into place.
And let's be honest, none of us want to be told what to do. Like, that's the one thing that like I had to learn about coaching really quickly, is that I have a whole lot of operational background knowledge. So advice, I've got a plenty. Stories that back up my advice, data, statistics, I've got a plenty. But for me to go say, you should do this or consider doing it this way, only go so far, versus them saying, you know what, I think I should do it this way. And I'm like, yes, that's it. And then they own it and they run with it, versus me trying to pull the teeth to get them to do it if I suggest it.
Or even similarly, like the idea that you can have like, hey, this is what I did at this kind. I had a similar situation. This is what I did, but what does that look like to you? Right? Because if you, right, the amount of times I've been given advice in like a work situation where I just get immediately completely overwhelmed. I can't even count the number of times where I'm like, you want me to do what? You want me to like okay, well that's, like reboot this whole program, or like learn something that I've never heard of before, or right, but right, we need to make it personal to us, right? So the solution, we can come to the same solution with different paths based on like what your skill set is, what your experience is, as opposed to the person giving you the advice.
Yeah. What are you most excited about in this new role at TrainerTainment?
I think, well, I already mentioned that I like deep diving into things, and this has already given me so many things. Like the idea that I hadn't really ever thought of how they build out like themes for laser tag and where those like structures come from. And I have been fascinated by that. I have never once thought about the layout of an arcade, or how redemption works in an arcade for prizes and stuff. And like, I already feel like this is very surface level of the work we're doing, but like the deep dive into the amount of stuff I'm going to know about how to run a like bowling lane and bowling facility. It's similar to, working at the overnight camp. I also learned, like, I became a lifeguard while doing that. I became certified in like high ropes and climbing towers. I had to learn how to teach archery, even though I'm terrible at it myself. So it's that same idea. I feel like I'm going to, the next time I go with my nieces and my family to an FEC, that I'm going to be able to talk. I'm going to be able to bother them so much with the details of like why this is here and why this works, and how important, X, Y, or Z is. So I love a good deep dive in that. And I think what's great is that the coaches and the staff and the team at TrainerTainment already have so much experience in this field, that like just listening into coaching sessions and sitting in has been already a huge education in those things that day to day, if you're in an FEC, you might not really think about at all, because it's so common out from industry outside of that. I'm fascinated by all of it. I love the pusher arcade machines, and so I'm glad to hear that those are really
they're quite popular. They are quite popular and quite addictive. That is for sure.
It's my gambling. That's like that's the slot machine of the of the arcade, I feel like.
Well, for anyone who wants to meet Genevieve, she is going to be with us at IAAPA this year. And so we are super, all the planning already going on for that big trade show of the year. And so come and meet her. Genevieve, thank you for spending your time. It will be fun to say this. If anyone wants to reach out to you, where would you send them?
Would I send them? Well, you can go to our website, trainertainment.net, and you can schedule a growth call by going to our About section. All of our information is there. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can find me there. And yeah, is there another answer?
Yeah, that was great. You get to actually like direct them to you through us this time. So, well, thank you for taking the time to join us and for introducing yourself to everyone out there. And they'll see you at IAAPA.
Thank you.
Wasn't Genevieve great? I know that you guys are all going to want to meet her and welcome her to this wonderful industry that we have. So make sure that you make a moment to stop by our booth at IAPA and meet the newest additions to the TrainerTainment team this year. As always, thank you guys for taking your time today. I know that time is precious and you chose to spend it here, and that I thank you for. Thank you again to my 2023 digital sponsors. And then if you have an idea for Think Tank, if you would like to be a guest on Think Tank, or if you'd like to sponsor Think Tank, you can always reach out to me, Candi at TrainerTainment.net. And then always be sure to check out where you can connect with us in real life. As I've mentioned, we will have our team at IAPA coming up, but you can check out all of our upcoming events and appearances can be found at TrainerTainment.net under our events menu. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time.